If you lost your voice, who would speak for you? It was a hot summer June day in Ohio, and I was outside jumping on our trampoline, which backed up to the golf course on our house. My mom was outside with me, and she looked up and she saw these dark, stormy clouds heading our way. And she said, "We better go inside." Not long after we went inside, there was quickly the storm that moved through our small town of Salina, Ohio. There was a downpour of rain, billowing thunder, many flashes of lightning. But it was one of those summer storms that as quickly as it came, it also left. And if you looked outside, you could actually see this line between where the blue skies were now moving in and those gray clouds were heading toward the next town. Then there was this crack of lightning. It was loud. And I swear my mom said, though sometimes I think it's my 11-year-old brain that made it up over time, but I swear my mom said out loud, "That must have hit something." Our telephone rang and I answered it. The man on the other end of the line, he sounded frantic as he was asking if he could talk to my mom or my dad. I handed the phone to my mom, but she wasn't on that call very long. And once she hit the off button, she now was just as frantic as that man had been. She told me to get my shoes, we had to get going, and I started searching the house for my chunky lime green flip-flops. As I was searching, I called out, "Mom, what happened?" She was grabbing her purse and her keys, and she looked at me and said, "Your sister's been struck by lightning." You see, 1 mile from where my mom and I were standing, my sister was working at the golf course. She, during the storm, had gone inside the clubhouse, and she was safe. And that downpour of rain threw all the golfers off the golf course. So once the storm had passed through, she had just one more job to do of the day. And that was to go out on the driving range and collect the stands where people set their bags when they go to practice hitting golf balls. She went out with that line of blue skies now coming through our town, was bending over, was picking up one of those stands, and a strike of lightning came back from that storm, and it hit my sister. It was a direct strike that was so powerful, it left a 3-foot deep hole right next to where she was standing, and immediately sent her into cardiac arrest. My mom had her foot all the way down on that gas pedal as we were trying to get through the neighborhood to get to the clubhouse. There was a panicked silence in that car, and I broke it to ask, "Mom, what happens to someone who's struck by lightning?" As an 11-year-old, I had no idea what to expect from my sister. As it turns out, my mom didn't know either. We pulled into that parking lot, and it was just this blur of ambulance and police lights. My mom threw the car into park. She jumped out and ran past this police officer who was trying to stop her and went right up for my sister. I also jumped out of the car, and then it was like my feet were planted right there because I didn't know where I was supposed to go in this scene. And I just looked around, trying to take everything in, and I saw my sister up the sidewalk, on the brick sidewalk, under the overhang of the golf course clubhouse. Paramedics were working all around her, and her legs were so blue. That's all I could focus on, were her blue legs. Like, did you know legs could be that blue? Like, what did that mean? 19 years later, I can tell you. My sister lost a lot of oxygen when that lightning strike hit her, and she suffered what's called an anoxic brain injury. This is her today, 19 years later. She has not been able to move or speak or eat on her own since then. But despite how dramatically her life changed on that day, she is still genuinely a very happy person and is always excited to get up and see what the next day holds. Now, that story about my sister I have shared hundreds of times. I have told it to USA Today. I've told it on the Miss America stage. I have told it at every TV station I've ever worked at, including here in Washington, D.C. I've told it at conferences and in classrooms across the country through a partnership with NOAA to go out and promote lightning safety. And every time I tell that story, I always end it the same way, and I say, when that lightning strike hit my sister, it took away her voice. And so that's why I'm here today, to be her voice and to tell her story. But today is a little different, because I want to tell you a part of the story I've actually never talked about before. And that was in one of the first of 3 hospitals that Christina would be in that summer. A nurse pulled my mom aside and said, "This is not only going to change your oldest daughter, Christina, it will change all of your daughters." for better or for worse. She told my mom how she has seen siblings in this exact same scenario go out and become doctors and nurses because they've just grown up in this medical world and it's just part of who they are. And I heard my mom overtelling that story to a friend, and I said, all right, I'm going to be a doctor in honor of my sister. A few years later, I realized I fainted at the sight of blood, so I had to go to Plan B. But over time, I have found that nurse's statement to not even begin to cover it. Having a sister like Christina, it doesn't just determine what career you're going to choose. It changes you in every single way. It gives you your foundation, and it makes you who you are, because she has taught me so many lessons in gratitude, responsibility, and purpose. I know you can all relate to this. It's getting cold outside. How many times do you wake up in the morning and you think, I don't want to get out of bed right now? When that happens to me, I think of Christina. And I think how sitting up on her own in bed would be the biggest thing in 19 years, because she's not been able to do that. Meanwhile, I can just throw back the covers, get out of bed, and not even once think about what muscles it takes to do all of that. That's a gift. For many years, my sister had to communicate to us by blinking her eyes once for yes and twice for no. So for me to be able to stand up here and tell you what's going on in my mind and my heart and speak it through these sentences and let you know exactly how I'm feeling, that is such a gift. Did you eat and swallow your food this morning? That's a gift. I mean, I could go on and on, but I think you get the idea. These little things that we take for granted every day, they are gifts. And when you are at the very impressionable age of 11 years old and you start to realize all of this just watching your sister, you start to require a lot more from yourself. My favorite quote is, "To whom much is given, much is required." And I find people who grow up with siblings who have additional challenges like my sister did and does, we end up requiring a lot from ourselves and also adding on this additional responsibility to in some way make up for the things they lost or the things they can't do. My senior year of high school, I quit the volleyball team to join the golf team. Now, I had not been out golfing since I was 11 years old, because on that day I said, I'm not going back out on the golf course until my sister can come out with me. It was something we always did together, and I was determined that she was going to make a full recovery and be right next to me golfing again. But now I was a senior in high school. I was the same age that my sister was when she was struck by lightning, and finishing her senior year of golf was something she never got to do. So I grabbed her golf clubs, I put on this guardian angel bracelet that she had been given in the hospital, and I went out and I finished what she started. Sometimes in stories like this, you might hear of resentment creeping in. Resentment toward a sibling because now there's so much attention on that sibling, or maybe because your normal life is never going to be normal again. I've been asked many times why, for Christina, she's a sense of inspiration and motivation for me instead of resentment, but I can't exactly pinpoint one area why that is the case here. I think it's somewhere in the mix of circumstances, my parents for sure, and also my sister. But I know that I'm not alone in that either. There are many of us who have siblings like Christina who use it as that source of motivation for others. You know the Washington Mystics MVP for the WNBA championship this year, Elena Deladon. She has made major career decisions based on her sister to be closer to her. She doesn't play overseas in the off-season, which she could make a lot of money doing because she wants to be closer to her sister. Jordan Spieth, he won the Masters and cited one of his inspirations and motivation is his younger sister, Ellie. Alex Bilodeau, an Olympic gold medalist, when he won that gold, he hugged his brother Frederick before he hugged the Canadian Prime Minister. We are just a few of hundreds and hundreds of examples of people who have gone out to make what could be a very negative, sad story about their sibling into a positive, hopeful source of joy for so many people. 4 years ago, my sister was diagnosed with cancer. Like Christina hadn't been through enough, now she's fighting for her life for a second time. And when we thought that we were just about to lose her, my sister Andrea looked at me and said, everything we do is because of Nina. And she's right. Really, the foundation in us is because of watching our sister and growing up next to her and seeing her overcome all of these challenges. I think you know by now that my sister is a fighter. And the doctor went in, removed the largest tumor he has ever removed in his career, but came out and told us that it was only being held on by one little stem, and that cancer hadn't spread. And she recovered to the joyous and beautiful person that she has always been. So the reason the story is different today is because looking back on this journey and all of these lessons of the gratitude and the responsibility, the purpose in life, I realized that that lightning strike, it didn't take my sister's voice away. In so many ways, it's only amplified her voice, because her voice is there in everyone who hears her story. It's there in the people that she meets, and her voice is certainly there in my own. Thank you.